didn't plan to catch my wife with a whisper. I planned a sandwich, a drive, and a sleeping toddler. But when you forget to turn off the baby monitor before you head across town, sometimes the house talks back to you. At 1 in the morning, in my mother-in-law's spare room with our son starfished beside me, the little screen lit and the kitchen mic crackled. A laugh that wasn't mine. Her voice, low and bright, the way she talks when she thinks no one can hear. "Come over!" He left. I lay there, my heart arguing with the clock. The monitor sat on the cardboard box of old books I'd promised to bring to Goodwill, blue LED pulled on the ceiling. The house I grew up in is all pine and quilts and thick curtains. That night, the room felt like a witness stand. My son's breath came in soft little puffs, the kind that still smell like graham crackers. I didn't touch the monitor. I didn't breathe. All I did was listen. Footsteps on tile. The soft seal of the back door closing. The low scrape of a chair. Water running. And then that sliver of a sentence again, a second slice, as if she were practicing, "He's gone. You can come." I hit mute. I stared into the hallway where a nightlight threw a slant of gold across framed photos. Casey and I were in 3 of them. I was 26 and grinning in a Seahawks hoodie. She was 24 and holding a paper cup of Pike Place coffee. The memory flickered like an old fluorescent bulb, the 2 of us, forehead to forehead, promising forever in a city that rains on your head and still feels like a clean start. I didn't sleep. I didn't drive back. I watched the monitor like it might confess a second time. It didn't. Instead, it gave me the white noise of my own kitchen and the unholy roar of my thoughts. When dawn finally smeared across the blinds, I had a plan that I would have laughed at a year ago. I would not confront. I would not accuse. I would not accuse. I would not, as my old man used to say, swing first and ask questions later. I would do the thing that has kept me alive as a DevOps engineer on pager duty at 3 in the morning. I would collect logs. She was at the table when I brought our son back home, hair in a top knot, the same University of Washington sweatshirt she always steals from me. The sink was empty. The counters had that after-dinner clean that looks like a hotel room you don't want to pay for. The garbage had been taken out. But the dishwasher, when I opened it to throw in the sippy cup, had 2 wine glasses on the top rack. One had a lipstick rim, worn thin on one side the way hers always is, because she talks and drinks at the same time. The other had a bare, clear mouth that caught the light. "Hey," she said, like I'd walked in from mowing the lawn. She kissed our son and then kissed me, light, quick, like a receipt tearing off. "How was Mom?" I set the cup down a little harder than I meant to. "She's fine. Monitor was weird." "What do you mean?" I know that question. I know it from incidents and outages and 3 a.m. postmortems. It is a question that buys time. I, of all people, should know. "I left it on," I said. "Heard you in the kitchen." She went very still. "If you looked out our back window then, you could see the stump of the maple we cut down last fall because it was leaning towards the garage. That's how she looked, upright, and then not." "Oh," she said after a second, a breathless syllable. "Oh, right. I was on the phone. With Kelsey. You know how she gets about her landlord." That was fast. I nodded, because that was safer than words. "Kelsey," I said. "She's freaking out about her lease." Casey did a little eye roll, practiced. "I told her to come over, but she didn't." The thing about gaslighting that nobody tells you is how good it sounds when you want it to be true. I wanted it to be true. I hugged my son and breathed in the clean, sleepy smell of him. I told myself I'd misheard a plural as a singular. I told myself that if something was wrong, I would know. We've been together 10 years. A decade should count for something more than a whisper and a dishwasher. All day I played with my boy, built towers, knocked them down, checked my work email from the couch. My company runs on Slack. That endless stream of pings and channels and reaction emoji that bleeds into your bones. I scrolled. I answered. I stared at Casey's calendar when she left her laptop open on the counter to run upstairs. Our shared Google Calendar is a rainbow of adult life. Daycare pickups in green, dentist appointments in red, my on-call week, a long gray bar. Her OT events were sprinkled across the month in a repeat pattern, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8 to midnight. Funny thing about patterns, you don't see them until you want to. That afternoon, I took my son to the grocery store on 15th, the one that sells the expensive blueberries that taste like real fruit instead of blue water. I bought 2 pork chops out of habit, then laughed at myself and put one back. When we came home, Casey had her crossbody bag on and her keys in hand. "They need me," she said, which used to sound like purpose and now sounded like a grand piano being tuned. The vendor botched a delivery. "Tonight?" I asked. She smiled like she was sorry, but not sorry enough. "I'll be home before 1. I wanted to tell her I'd heard her at 1. Instead, I said, "Okay." She kissed our son's hair. She kissed my cheek. Her perfume was the lemon one that makes the house smell like sunny Saturdays. After she left, I did the dishes. I placed the same 2 wine glasses back on the top rack, an experiment I hated myself for. Then I did a thing that felt like betrayal and safety at the same time. I checked our doorbell camera logs, the Nest, the irrelevant little sensor details I never paid attention to before, because I trusted the person I shared a bed with. No stranger the night before, no unknown face, no car lingering, only the soft, ordinary trail of my wife moving through our life. But when I went to the trash can in the garage to throw away the leaky yogurt pouch, I found a paper towel wad tucked deep in the bag, lipstick smears like red quotation marks across the white, and 2 corks. "We don't drink red on weeknights. Her rule." What's that worth? The smell of corks and paper towel ink, and the feeling of your stomach trying to become a fist. Nothing in court, probably. Everything in my chest. I told myself, again, that I would wait. You don't escalate without data. That's true in systems and marriage. Or maybe that's what you tell yourself when you're afraid to look your life in the teeth. The next day, a Slack message popped into a channel we both share at work. A catch-all called Product Random, where people post memes and cat photos and occasionally vendor swag giveaways. It was a nothing message, a sentence I would have skimmed past any other day. "Thanks for last night," and a heart. From a guy named Derek, a project manager whose hair always looks wet and who once told me, "DevOps is like a vibe," in a meeting where I almost chewed my pen in half. He deleted it fast. Blink and miss it fast. But I've been on incident bridges long enough to know how fast is slow to the person who cares. I screenshotted it before the little, "This message has been deleted." Tag replaced the text. I stared at his name. I felt the stupid, childish burn of it. The image of his hands gesturing in stand-ups. The memory of his laugh when I made a joke about Kubernetes that only 4 people in the room understood. The way he once asked about daycare like he actually cared. I didn't make a scene at work. I waited until I could taste my own tongue again, and then walked to the break room and filled my water bottle, and then walked back. In the afternoon, I took a late lunch and drove to the downtown garage that has the polite sign about the first floor being for customers only. My car sat on the 3rd floor with the other people who work too much and pay too much to store their anxieties in concrete boxes. I sat there with the air off and watched my hands. They shook like old men's hands. When I got home, she was there. She'd beat me by 20 minutes, I guess. The house smelled like basil and garlic. My favorite cast iron pan sat on the stove with heat ghosts, still shimmering at the edges. 2 plates were set on the dining table with our wedding china we only use on holidays. The little linen napkins her mom gave us had been ironed. A candle stood unlit between the plates like a witness who hasn't been sworn in. She froze the way she did that morning, only harder, like the pan in her hand suddenly weighed 50 pounds. Color ran out of her face. Her eyes flicked left, right, like she was checking for exits. You're early, she said, and it landed between us like a dumbbell. I am. Work. Ended early. It did. I lifted my phone, the screenshot open, the Slack interface with Derek's name and the words that could mean anything and meant exactly one thing. And this popped in. She pressed her lips together so hard they went white. That's not what it looks like. Then what is it? It was. She blinked. It was a joke. From Derek. He's a dork. He says things. She inhaled. Everyone knows he's like that. Like what? My voice surprised me. It wasn't big or loud. It sounded like a hallway with a door at the end. Like the kind of guy who says thanks for last night to a woman he works with on a public channel, deletes it, and emojis a heart. She set the pan down and leaned on the counter like it was the only solid thing in the room. A sound came out of her that was half scoff, half plea. You're reading into everything. If this is about Kelsey. It isn't about Kelsey. I let the sentence sit there with its shoes off. I forgot to turn off the baby monitor when I took Liam to your mom's. Her breath stopped. Actually stopped. For a second, I thought she was going to faint. Her hand found the counter, steadied itself. The room closed in. What did you hear? She asked. And that right there was as close to a confession as I needed. Your voice, I said. You said to someone come over because I was gone. She shook her head, but not convincingly. I was talking to Kelsey. You used he. It's how I talk. You know that. Her voice got sharp. She was getting out of the apology crouch, stepping into offense, a play I'd seen and used at work when a server went down and someone needed to sound like they had a theory. You're making up a whole thing. You've barely been here this month. You're always on call. You take overtime like oxygen. I let her words clatter to the floor where I could step around them. Who's dinner for? I asked, nodding at the plates. You, she said, too fast. I wanted to surprise you, but you ruined it. If you were surprising me, why are there 2 glasses on the table and 2 corks in the trash? The old me, the summer picnic, Seattle me, would have let her drive, would have let her define our roads. The new me watched her face do math and listened for the wind in the gap between us. That gap had a smell now, like lemon perfume and wine. It had texture, like paper towel fibers under your thumb. It had a voice. Come over. He left. Derek is a friend, she said, the last good lie standing. Is that what we're calling it? Don't be cruel, she said, and in that instant, I could see our entire marriage, all the ways I jumped when she said, jump, all the ways I filled in her blanks with gratitude because she made our house pretty and our son safe and our life look like a picture. She stepped closer. We can fix this. Her hand came up to touch my chest. I stepped back. My son's little blue truck sat on the floor by the fridge. I could see where the paint had been chipped off the fender from where he'd banged it against the doorframe. I picked it up and turned it in my hand like evidence. I don't think you're sorry, I said, almost gently. I think you're sorry you got caught. She opened her mouth. She closed it. Then she did a thing I recognized immediately because I've done it under fluorescent lights with managers who wanted a narrative clean enough to share in a slide deck. She started spinning. Stress at work. Feeling unseen. Me being on call. The grind. The time she asked for more and I thought a raise was an apology. The midnight childcare. Her body changing after pregnancy. The way our love had become logistics. All of this was true. None of this was an alibi. I'm not a monster, she said finally, quiet. I'm lonely. I'm lonely too, I said, and the truth of it ran a finger down my spine. But I didn't invite someone into our home when my husband was gone and my son was asleep. Silence. The kitchen clock ticked like it was talking about someone else's life. Are you going to tell HR? She said then, so softly it was almost tender. I looked at the plates, at the good china, at the way she had done the edges of everything and still missed the center. I don't want to ruin your job, I said. It was not a lie. I don't want to ruin our son's life. Also, not a lie. But this isn't going back in the bottle. She took that in, like a person swallows a pill. Counseling? Maybe, I said, though I already knew the answer. But it starts with you telling the truth. She didn't. Not then. Not for 2 days after. What she did was tap dance in place. She adjusted her story hourly. It was Kelsey. It was a joke. It was gaslighting only if I wanted it to be. Meanwhile, my phone filled itself with small confirmations, like a magician flicking out scarves. Google Calendar said her Tuesday, Thursday overtime had been clocking in since March. Our neighbor's camera showed a silver Honda pulling up twice in the last month around 10:45 p.m. and leaving at 10:08 a.m. She insisted that was DoorDash. I asked her if DoorDash drivers usually park 2 blocks up and walk in on foot. On Friday, I went into the office with a calm I didn't believe in. I sat in my manager's glass-walled cube and closed the door and told him I needed to talk to HR. He blinked. He asked if I was okay. He asked carefully if I was sure. I said yes in the tired voice of a person who has said no to themselves too many times. HR listened with the face they wear when they know the company has a policy and the policy has teeth. The woman I talked to took notes. She asked for screenshots. I gave them. She asked if I wanted to file a complaint with names. I did not until I did. I don't know how to explain that except to say there is a point where you stop trying to keep the boat from rocking and realize you are already underwater. When I left HR, I stood in the stairwell between the 7th and 6th floors and waited for my breath to come back. I thought about what my dad told me after his divorce, how he wished he'd been brave earlier. I thought about my son's hands pressing cereal onto the high chair tray. I thought about Basalt, the weird bar near our house where we used to split fries after walks in the rain. I was both a husband and not, both a father and a man with his own face in a mirror. I told Casey that night. I said I'd gone to HR. I said I'd used the words relationship and coworker and policy. Her eyes flared. You did what? I tried to talk to you, I said. You kept telling me I was imagining things. She looked like someone had kicked over her Lego tower. She sat on the couch and pressed her fingers, knuckles white, into the space between her knees. I didn't want to hurt you, she said. You chose to, anyway. The next week turned into a set of rooms I had to walk through, whether I wanted to or not. HR interviewed her. They interviewed Derek. Company policy clicked, slow and inexorable, through its gears. They told her to work from home during the investigation. Derek went oddly quiet, the wet-haired enthusiasm scrubbed off, the jazz hands folded. I slept on the couch the night she cried like the house had come down, and I felt like a wall. We tried one therapy session. We sat on a blue couch that someone had picked for its calming color. The therapist had a bowl of smooth stones on the table and a soft voice that made me want to confess to things like stealing Twix bars when I was 12. Casey talked first, because of course she did. She is good at narrative, good at arranging the furniture of words so the room looks like someplace you'd want to sit. She talked about busyness and pressure and loneliness and the way I retreat into screens. I listened, and I didn't argue, and then when it was my turn, I said, without drama, that none of those things opened the back door at 1 in the morning. The therapist nodded like a metronome. Casey cried. I didn't. It was strange to be the dry-eyed one. At home, I kept catching the details that had always been there, but had never made me flinch. The way she put her hair up, quickly. The way a dancer puts in a bun before class. The text tone she'd assigned to unknown numbers. The extra toothbrush in the downstairs bathroom that she said was for guests even though we don't have people over on Tuesdays at midnight. I made dinner and fed our son and took him to daycare and picked him up. He started saying new words, truck, ball, daddy. The first time he said mama, after she'd moved her things to the narrow guest room we used to call the office, It felt like getting hit with a riptide while you were standing in shallow water. I think I knew it was over before the night it was officially over. But you still have to walk through a door to be out of a house. It was a Thursday. She had an OT block on the calendar. I took off early with a flimsy excuse about an HVAC tech and caught the 99 to beat traffic. The Sky had that low silver lid that never opens. I parked 2 streets over and walked to our place like I was trying to remember the exact number of steps from the sidewalk to the porch. My key went into the lock, and the house breathed at me like a dog who doesn't know whether to wag or bark. The plates were set again. The wine glasses sat on the table again, one with its lipstick ring neat as a halo, one blank like a confession. The candle this time was lit. The flame jittered when the door closed. She came around the corner from the kitchen in a dress I hadn't seen in months. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. "I live here," I said, and my voice wasn't cruel. It was tired to the bone. "Who's coming?" Her mouth worked. The truth moved behind her face like a fish at the surface of a lake. "No one," she said. "I'm not doing this." I set my keys down on the sideboard with the little glass bowl of seashells we took from Alki the first summer we were together, because it felt like we were allowed to take something pretty and keep it. You can tell the truth, or you can pack a bag. Her eyes went wet. "Dan, please." "Loot, pack a bag." "Like, you can't just..." "I can." I pointed to the candle. "Blow that out. It's a fire hazard." She did. It made me want to laugh and cry at the same time, the way she obeyed the small thing instead of the big one. She went upstairs. I sat at the table and watched the smoke ribbon up into nothing and thought about all the times we'd said for better or worse and never sat down to inventory what worse might cost. 10 minutes later, she came down with a duffel and looked at me like a person looks at a ledge. She said, very quietly, "Do you hate me?" "I don't," I said, and the truth of that surprised me. I don't have room for hate. I have a kid who needs breakfast at 6:45 and a job that doesn't care if my heart is broken. I have a dishwasher to unload. She nodded like a person who has run out of straws to grasp. "Where will I go?" "Your mom's," I said. It felt both petty and right. She's good with quilts and bad with excuses. She left. The house sounded different with the door closed, lighter and heavier. My son woke at 2 and cried. I sat on the floor by his crib and touched his back and sang off-key. In the quiet afterward, I felt something like relief beaming through the sadness, a lighthouse in weather. It wasn't joy. It was the end of a chase. HR's process finished 2 weeks later. They put official words in official emails. Relationship with a subordinate coworker. Violation of policy. Counseling and reassignment for her. A warning and transfer for Derek. Inside our house, we filled out forms with other official words. Dissolution. Parenting plan. Division of assets that turned a life into a spreadsheet. In court, a judge with rimless glasses and the patience of a granite countertop glanced at the baby monitor clip I'd clipped into a file like I was doing a demo for a new system. He glanced at the Slack screenshot. He glanced at us. 50-50 custody, he said, and the gavel voice of him made it real. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment that looks at Queen Anne's backside and smells like someone's always making toast. Half my clothes went into boxes. Half of everything did. Casey found a small place near Green Lake and sent me photos of Liam at the playground. His hair, his joy, which has not yet learned how to dim itself for adult tragedies. When I drop him off at her new place, I see the way her face flinches when he runs back for a second hug, and I have to leave quickly because it is possible to be both right and wrecked. There is a theory in my head that if I had thrown the monitor into a drawer, if I had taken the batteries out, if I had been the man who keeps his head down and his mouth shut and his heart on a leash, I could still be married. There's another theory that says I am more married to myself than I have been in years. I don't know which is smarter. I just know that on Tuesdays and Thursdays now, I make dinner for just me and a little boy with oatmeal on his chin. We sit at a cheap table from a Swedish store, and we use paper napkins, and I let him smash peas because peas deserve it. When I tuck him in on my nights, he says mama and daddy with equal urgency, and I feel the world hold and break. I see Derek in the hall sometimes, at work. He looks at me like he wants to apologize and also like he wants me to combust. I look at him like time has already done what it always does to men who think they're lead characters in everyone's story. I don't hate him either. When I think of him, I think of a wet sidewalk and how fast it dries when the sun pushes through. The other week, I picked up a bottle of wine and put it back down. Instead, I bought a basil plant even though every plant I've ever owned dies 2 weeks after I start calling it mine. I put it on the sill in my kitchen, this new kitchen in this new apartment with its view of a radio tower wearing red blinking lights like earrings. The basil is still alive. I am too. Sometimes, on the nights when my son is asleep in the small room with the dinosaur sticker we picked out while he pointed and shouted dino with a G like a drum beat, I take out the baby monitor. I turn it on even though the room is 10 steps away. I listen to the white noise that sounds like rain on Lake Union. It isn't about fear anymore, it's about proof. Proof that the small things you hear can save you from the big lies you want to believe. Proof that I can live with a quiet. Proof that silence, in the right light, is not the absence of love, but the space where you might build it again. Weeks after the last court date, after the last box, after we traded the good plates for custody schedules and made something survivable out of 2 people whose orbit collapsed, I ran into Casey at the grocery store, the one with the good blueberries. She was in the pasta aisle, holding a jar of marinara and looking lost in a small way I remembered from when she used to read menus like maps. For a second, we were both 20-something again, and the city was an adventure we wanted to share. She saw me. She smiled a paper smile. I said hi. She said hi. We talked about Liam's new word. He'd added basil to his vocabulary, though it sounded like so. And she laughed, truly laughed, because he'd tried to eat a leaf and made a face like betrayal. I'm sorry, she said then, quiet, like a person dropping a stone into a lake just to see the ripples. I know, I said, and it was not forgiveness and not cruelty. It was a truth we could both live with. The aisle was bright. The jar was heavy. Somewhere above us, a kid in a cart was singing the alphabet wrong, and it made me want to live forever. That night, after I put Liam down, I sat with the basil and the monitor and the old ache that had taken on a different shape. I thought about how I'd stopped her story before it rewrote mine. I thought about details and how they can be knives or keys. I thought about my dad, who forgave too fast and ended up with a story he never got to narrate. I am not him. I am not the man who confuses love with surrender anymore. I'm just a guy in Seattle who knows how to read a log file and a face and a flame and who's learning, slow and honest, how to sit with quiet without mistaking it for absence. If you ever find yourself listening to a kitchen through a cheap speaker, wondering whether you heard a he or a she, a plural or a singular, I hope you hear yourself first. I hope you remember that love is not the art of pretending. I hope you remember that the small things, lipstick on a glass, a calendar that doesn't match the story, a sentence spoken into an empty room, don't have to be terrible if you believe yourself quickly enough. They can be mercies, sharp ones, but mercies all the same. Would you have gone to HR or tried to keep it inside the house? Where is the line between fighting for a marriage and fighting yourself? If you stayed with me through this, tell me what you would have done differently and why. Like, comment, subscribe if you want more stories like this.